Welcome to FootballGamePlan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our 2013 NAIA Preseason All-American team. Now, there's many players across the country that are worthy of being on this list, so let's take a look at our first team All-Americans, starting with the quarterback position.
Eric Williamson out of St. Ambrose has had an outstanding career there. You look at he's 5th all-time in passing yards, completions, 2nd all-time in passing touchdowns in school history. Last year he had 35 touchdowns, completed 62% of his passes, definitely worthy of being an All-American.
Terrence Cobb out of Cumberland was the nation's leading rusher last year with over 1,900 yards. He actually fell 9 yards short of 2,000 and also rushed for 26 touchdowns, bringing his career total to 47 touchdowns. And he had a 3-game stretch during the season where he was virtually unstoppable. You look at games versus Campbellsville, Georgetown, UVA Wise, where he rushed for over 258 yards, 257 yards, and 327 yards, respectively. This guy is one of the best running backs in the country, regardless of division.
Running back Tevin Lake from the reigning national champion Marion Knights has had an outstanding career as well. He's a consistent performer, a bell cow back, almost 1,600 yards last season at 5.2 yards a carry.
Jesse Vaughn out of Evangel is an explosive deep threat. Last year, this young man had 59 receptions, nearly 1,300 yards at 21 yards a catch. What was most impressive was his 6 100-yard games and a 200-yard receiving output versus Benedictine, one of the best receivers in NAIA.
Joel McCabe definitely knows his way to the end zone. This guy had 18 touchdowns last season and is a matchup nightmare. And when you look at LADON HUDSON out of Mid-American Nazarene, he's a red zone threat using that big frame at 6'4", 215 pounds to outmuscle defenders to the end zone. 11 touchdown receptions last season.
I'm a big fan of Lamont Wims out of Robert Morris. This is a guy that rushed for over 1,600 yards last year, 15 touchdowns at 7.2 yards a carry. But what I like most is the fact that they utilized him in the passing game. He nearly had 300 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. Very explosive.
Drew Gibson, 6'6", 250-pound right tackle from Southern Oregon, was a first-team All-Frontier Conference member last year, as well as a member of the All-Academic Squad. And when you look at Austin Britt out of Ottawa, 6'2", 320 pounds, one of the best run blockers in all of NAIA. In 2011, he was honorable mention All-KCAC, and last year was on the first team. Kevin Connaughton out of Georgetown, 6'4", 270-pound senior, is part of one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Keep an eye on that team moving forward this season. Should do some great things. Last year, Bo Amos out of Central Methodist was a second-team All-HAAC performer, and I believe this year he's ready to elevate his game to consensus All-American level. And when you look at Dillon Carmichael out of Doane, this is a guy that excels in pass protection. He was a consensus All-American last year and first-team All-GPAC. Andre Jolly out of Baker was an outstanding pass rusher last year, and last season broke the single-season team sack record with 16 and was named first-team All-American. Phil Lattimore out of Nebraska Wesleyan was a consistent nuisance on the interior defensive line last season, 7 sacks, and was also named first-team All-GPAC. And Marvin NEWKIRK out of Kentucky Christian, that's a great program by the way, 6 feet, 275 pounds, possesses the killer combination of quickness and awareness that made him an All-Mid-South Conference performer last year. And Ty Phillips out of Missouri Valley, he's a former Missouri Tigers signee, led the NAIA in sacks and TFLs last season, and was a big reason why the Vikings made it one game close to the NAIA National Championship game last season, took a loss to Marion. Linebacker Jeremy Wallace out of St. Ambrose had an outstanding 2012 campaign where he was named consensus All-American, 123 tackles and 51 solo stops.
When you talk about crazed linebacker, you talk about Weston Hazelhurst out of the Cumberlands. This is the guy last year, 23.5 TFLs, 8.5 sacks, and 102 tackles. That's getting the job done from that linebacker position.
Sean Bloomquist out of Carroll is a stout linebacker that was named first team All-Frontier Conference last season. Look for him to make a push to be a consensus All-American. Tyler Davis out of Missouri Valley was a highly decorated cornerback last season and racked up the accolades. Last year was named the HAAC Defensive Player of the Year and made their first team All-Conference as both a corner and a returner, and was also a consensus All-American. Safety Adrian Hightower out of Cumberland's had 9 interceptions last season and set the single-season school record with that mark. Jaquel Skinner out of Bethel is an outstanding safety, and last year they set a team record with 6 interceptions versus Cumberland, and Jaquel had 3 of those INTs. Travis McKinney out of Friends has the size and athleticism that you want at the cornerback position, and last year was part of a very talented secondary, but it was his all-around skill set that makes him an All-American. Last year came away with 4 interceptions. What sophomore kicker Ben Hurley did as a freshman for Grandview was impressive. 11 out of 12 on his field goal attempts with a long of 42, and was also strong on his kickoffs with a long of 55 yards, 9 of which were touchbacks. And we look at punter Grayson Quick out of Pikeville, very strong leg, 45 yards a punt, 9 of which were down inside the 20. KEDRICK STARR out of Eastern Oregon has been an outstanding performer since he set foot on campus. Now, last year as a kickoff return, he averaged almost 24 yards a return, but he makes his team as a punt returner 15 yards per return and also scored a touchdown last season. And Garrett Campbell out of Peru State was an NAIA All-Nebraska member, first team All-HAAC as a returner, 2 interceptions last season, and also scored a touchdown on one of those interception returns, but his kickoff return game is very strong. This is a guy that averaged over 22 yards a return. Now let's take a look at our preseason NAIA second team All-American, starting with the offense, and I think that Dylan Baxter out of Baker will put together an impressive All-American type season. You also look at Sean Grove out of Kansas Wesleyan, very good offensive lineman. Clay Sierra, the tight end out of Southern Oregon, had a very impressive freshman year because he was a direct beneficiary of outstanding All-American type quarterback play from Austin Dodge. Keep an eye on him as a junior. I think he's going to shatter records. This guy had an impressive sophomore campaign. This year will be even special for Southern Oregon as well as Austin Dodge. Now let's take a look at our second team defensive All-Americans. Andrew Mahan out of Faulkner, one of the outstanding pass rushers you'll see at that level. Dylan Romero, remember we talked about Kentucky Christian's program, and he's a junior, but he put up some impressive numbers last season. Aaron Roberg, another outstanding defensive player coming out that Morningside program, and Lorenzo Faust, the safety out of Southwestern. I'm expecting him to put up some huge numbers this year, building on what he was able to do last season.